But in order to kick us off, I'd first like to recognize the chair of the Budget, Finance, and Innovation Committee, Councilmember Bob Blumenfield. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Excuse me, Mr. Blumenfield. Andrew Graebner, there will be no interruption of this meeting whatsoever. If you can't control yourself, please leave the meeting now. I'm going to exclude you from the meeting the next time I hear any sound from you whatsoever. All right, and that applies to anybody else from the public who's here. There will be just simply no interruptions of the work of this council as we're working to approve the city's budget for the coming year.
I just have to start off by saying how disappointed I am by this recommendation, Mr. Blumenfield, because the lived experience and the lack of transparency around, we followed this protocol, in fact, for the last 3 budget cycles. It started in the 21-22 budget cycle when there were additional resources that were allocated to grid, and we had questions around summer night lights and the deployments, and there's a whole lot of money around here. And we were trying to ascertain where the growths were going to be. And Matt, you were in a different position at the time, so you recall that this is not a new practice. This is something that we began several years ago because it was intended to ensure that we could have report backs on what the progress was related to grid. Grid, as myself included, as someone who led the initiative to create Project Turn, which is the therapeutic unarmed response training that we gave to all the intervention workers to help support them with the work that they were doing. I still have not gotten a report back from the mayor's office post that commitment that they made over a year ago. I talked to Bobby Arias, who told me when he got that email. And I said, Bobby, how did you not get paid? And I framed this, colleagues, in a manner to help you understand. Not a single grid contractor gets all of the money up front. Not a single grid contractor. There's no contractor that does any contract work in the city of Los Angeles that gets money all up front. And let me frame it in this context. If I went to a contractor to make repairs on my house, and they said, hey, it's going to cost me $50,000 to renovate your house, I wouldn't write a check to $50,000 for that contractor. I issue it incrementally as the work is concluded. The delays with getting those contracts paid have nothing to do with what was in the UB or anything else, because the mayor's office still has $30 million to begin that work. There's nothing obstructing it by keeping $12.9 million in the UB as we talked about, the belt and suspenders of the exercises that we are doing in this budget cycle. Because unfortunately, the trust has been betrayed. And with that message that I received a copy of that indicated that completely misled all the intervention advocates that came in, it was really disappointing. It was disheartening because it showed a lack of truth and transparency. And for me, I can't continue to sign on to, again, this is a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me moment. This has been the practice, it's not new. But why are we trying to retract our obligation to just have a conversation when they've already shown us that they have zero intention of reporting to the committee? They take on challenging work. And so I just want to make sure, so colleagues, with that, I ask that we continue to support these resources staying in the UB, pending the mayor's office has 2 opportunities before July 1st to come report to Public Safety Committee, answer these questions, and then it'll get released. But by the way, it does absolutely nothing to hold up the payments. That was a blatant lie that was transmitted. And I've talked to many intervention workers and contractors about that. That was a blatant lie. And it was unfortunate that I got to see that. That already tells me what's happening here, and it's not okay.
Okay.
So I ask that we continue to support this remaining in the UB And Mr. Blumenfield, I don't support your amendment.
Thank you. Councilmember Soto Martinez.
Thank you so much, Council President. Should ring the bell right now. So we do at the monastery, ring the bell to sort of start afresh. So I was incredibly moved by the testimony that we heard yesterday in public comment. Many of the folks that came were from neighborhoods where I grew up, and this was not something that we had growing up. It's not a service that we had in the city. And let me tell you, I know the effects of not having those services, right? People getting hurt, shot, stabbed, a lot of emotions coming up from, a group of folks, and retaliation and more retaliation and more retaliation. In some neighborhoods, some districts that we represent, we hear about multiple shootings happening just over the weekend. And so these are the folks that, are tasked with the work of getting in there, literally into the crossfires of what happened in the neighborhood. And so I get that there's a lot of history here, a lot of dynamics that are happening. I respect the work that you do, Councilmember Rodriguez. I think you have a lot of ownership over your committee. You try to run a very tight ship. But the thing that I'm concerned about is that I don't want there to be the perception, right? The perception that these folks in the communities are not being valued, they're not being prioritized. And I think that's what I heard yesterday, was that there is a perception, right? And I don't want that to happen in the city, especially with those folks. So as much as this is a difficult, causing a lot of emotions, I don't feel disappointed in Councilmember Blumenfield is doing here. I think that's the correct thing to do. I think the mayor has given her word, that they will come and they will report. That word is pretty good for me. I've had a wonderful relationship with the mayor. I think she's come through every single time. So as much as I know there's opinions on this matter, I fully support the receive and file that Councilmember Blumenfield is asking for. And so I do urge this body to vote in favor of that motion.
Thank you. Councilmember McCosker.
I have to say I'm heartbroken by this. I realize that a big part of this is a contest between one power of the city and another power of the city, but let's remember what this is about. This is about violence in our communities, and the best possible folks, the interventionists, the peacemakers, the peacekeepers, the ambassadors, to assist the entire network of public safety in the city for peace. And I have to say that what we proposed in budget and finance, and it's been said by both sides of this argument, what we did in budget and finance is exactly what we did last year. Exactly. And the money transferred exactly on time. And there wasn't $1 short, there wasn't 1 day late by this body. Now, were there contracting difficulties in yellow tape and red tape that created yellow tape? Yes. Apparently that's true. But I want to say that putting out information to the community to say that we did something and have it be false, that we did something that harmed public safety out there, was irresponsible. It's not just irresponsible because of the political argument. It has created in the last few days actual harm in our communities. If you're one of our ambassadors or one of our interventionists and you're hearing from the third floor that you're not going to get paid, what does that do? What does that do to the confidence in the city? What does that do to public safety? That message, which was inaccurate, which was false, which was apparently a political play, irresponsibly harmed public safety, at least in my community, because I have dear friends who get up in the middle of the night and try to solve problems, frankly, that police officers can't solve, that I can't solve, only they can solve. And they were told that we did something, and they were told falsely that we did something that was going to cause them to be laid off, not paid, have to front load money, whatever. That actually harmed public safety. That actually harmed public safety. And I swear to God, I'm heartbroken by that. We all go to too many vigils, too many funerals. We go to too many repasses. We hug moms who lost their kids. And that should not be a political fight. I had to talk to great friends who I would do anything for and say, I swear to God, we didn't do that. We did exactly the same thing this year that we did last year. I realize that the compelling testimony, and I agree, it was compelling testimony, and it will be tomorrow, it was yesterday, it is compelling testimony. And I get your perception argument, and I get what you're trying to do. But I didn't hear from the mayor's office, except a nod of the head, that they're going to come in and talk to anybody. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Mr. Hale, because I don't think you're the one that's going to come in. But what are we talking about? When is the mayor's office coming in, and who are they talking to? What committee is it going to? Is it going to Budget and Finance? Is it going to Public Safety? Are we going to get a list? Are we going to get information? Because at this point, I don't have a finish to this sentence. But at this point, the only thing that matters is the public safety out there. The only thing that matters. And sometimes the other side compromises our position. We have to have a clear and unambiguous message to the women and men who are out in the street doing this work that everything's going to be okay. And this political message has already been clouded. So I'm serious. I want to know, when's the mayor's office coming in, who's coming in, and what are we going to hear?
Per the chair's conversation, the mayor is committed to having a report produced. Sorry, I think my mic is off. Yeah. Is that better? Okay. Per the chair's statement, the mayor is committed to ensuring that we produce a report in the month of June in writing and to the Public Safety Committee to ensure that you have the data that you need to ensure that grid is moving appropriately. And we'll produce a report in writing as soon as the data is available regarding summer night lights so that we can give you the results of the activities that take place over this summer. So I want to respond also a little bit to the what's changed from this year to last year. Grid providers are experiencing enormous strain as a result of increasing costs like the city is and like many of the other nonprofits that are supported by the city, particularly in the summer because they staff up to support the Summer Night Lights program. And the disruption in the financing availability that goes through the month of June and into July interrupts not just the payments, but the contracting itself. And so without contracting authority and a firm contract from the city, the grid providers aren't able to secure letters of credit and have the financing in place to get through those summer months while they're waiting for billing from the city to kick in. And so we're trying to avoid any disruption in the services that are provided by these contractors. This is designed to avoid any appearance that there will be any disruption in the city's support for the life-saving work that the grid contractors do. We do appreciate that council supports this program. There is no desire to evade accountability in the operation of the program. We just don't want to have there be any disruption not in both the billings and the contracting that's required so that the nonprofits themselves can have smooth operations through the summer months.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McCosker, because I was just as furious last night when I got some calls and I talked to Bobby, who obviously leads the San Fernando Valley Coalition on Gangs, and he was just as disappointed that they were lied to. And it was a blatant lie. And it was a really poorly miscalculated attempt to try and smear this council, and me specifically, naming me in the email as an individual that was obstructing their funding, which could not be farther from the truth. When all I've ever done was increase additional resources to support these intervention workers. But what troubles me is that every time we were promised a report They then blew us off. All this is the belts and suspenders that we have been exercising throughout all of this budgetary process. To put these resources in the UB, it does nothing to obstruct the contracting for these individuals. In fact, because the mayor's office does the contracting, that's part of the conversation. It's not incumbent upon anyone else. The mayor's office actually conducts this. So when you want to act like a department, you have to get a report from the council. You have to get a report to the council. And so, colleagues, I cannot support Mr. Blumenfield's amendment. It does nothing to delay supporting these intervention workers in the way that they need to be supported. For me, a no vote on Mr. Blumenfield's amendment is a yes vote for greater transparency. And so I ask for your no vote.
Thank you. Before I turn to Mr. Blumenfield to close, I want to say we shouldn't be in this position right now. We shouldn't even be having this discussion right now. And if any, Councilmember Rodriguez, if any staff member of the mayor's office or any department or anyone else in this city tells a member of your staff that they are not going to report to this council or to a council committee, that is always 100% unacceptable. The only answer that anybody should give to this council when we request a report or an oversight is yes, ma'am, yes, sir. There is no other acceptable answer than those two things. So let's be clear on that right from the get-go. And I actually agree very much that the email that was sent to some of these contractors was incredibly misleading in what it said about this this council's actions, both with the recommendation of the Budget and Finance and Innovation Committee this year, and in general, because we have done this in the past, this exact same process. And in fact, even before we engaged in this process, there were still contracting delays, even before there was any money put in the UB relating to grid at all. So there are problems that the contractors need to be very concerned about, for sure. One of the problems they do not need to be concerned about is this council. And yet, as Mr. McCosker very eloquently described, the reality that we are facing this minute is that they are concerned, and that has a real impact on the streets. And people who are deciding whether or not to come to work for a grid contractor are now left with the information that's out there, the perception that Mr. McCosker described, that they may not get paid, they may get laid off in the middle of the year or whatever. And I agree with Mr. McCosker. We do need to clarify that, send a clear and unambiguous message that that is not true, that they will get the support of this council and they will be paid. And I believe that Mr. Blumenfield's motion creates that clarity and creates that unambiguity. And that's why I think we should support the motion that's before us. Now, to be clear, members, there is what we're really discussing here is not whether or not there should be reporting, not whether or not there should be transparency, but how is it delivered? Councilmember Rodriguez and then Councilmember Bloomfield.
Thank you. So, Mr. President, I appreciate hearing you say that that asking for a report is not something that we should be blown off on. Okay? Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. On multiple occasions, we have been blown off. And it's not just on grid, it's also been on homelessness committee. My staff was explicitly told by mayor's office staff that they will not report to the council, and they will not send staff, that we can talk to the CAO, and that we can get reports from the CLA. That's what we've been told. So you can imagine why I have a little apprehension. When people show you who they are, believe them. And so I'm in a moment right now where all I'm trying to do is ensure that we can protect these very intervention workers by making sure we're making the most of the money that we have, that we can provide the training that we started a year ago when I launched Project Turn in South LA with these intervention workers. I want to make sure that that's happening. When there were promises that in Summer Night Lights that they were going to contract with small local businesses and restaurants to feed those sites, I haven't seen that materialize in my district, that they're contracting with the restaurants. We were promised a lot of things, and then the reports, they just said, no, we're not going to report to you. So unfortunately, I wish I could just have the blind trust to say, oh, yeah, I believe that they're going to come back and do this, when it was just weeks ago, and not including, by the way, this blatant lie of an email that was transmitted. That just tells me everything that I need to know, because misinforming the very people that you purport to care about is reckless and dangerous and wrong. And that's what I'm most furious about. How dare you lie to these people for failures that you've made in leading this program? And so, Mr. Hale, this is not just about a one-time report. Just like LAPD reports, just like fire reports, these are ongoing engagements from those that manage the programs. I've got Metro coming in a week to talk about safety issues on the Metro. I can get Metro to come up, but I can't get a program that's operating for public safety in the mayor's office to report to Public Safety Committee. That's obscene. And it jeopardizes public safety. So this is not a one-time. This is an ongoing. And the problem is this is all the leverage we've had, and that's why we've had to do this in the past. I'm just incredibly disappointed that I continue to be disappointed by the fact that there's a resistance to just be forthcoming and provide the information that we've asked for. It's not rocket science. And in fact, I hope it's as great as we hope it should be, but I promise you, if it was operating to the greatest extent that it could possibly be, why the hell wouldn't we be celebrating this from the top of the Bradley Tower? This is about making sure that we are making the most of the resources that we have, because when I look at all of our city departments, they're out there trying to make everything work with very little. So with that, colleagues, I ask for your no vote on Mr. Blumenfield's amendment.
Thank you. Councilmember Blumenfield to close.
I mean, I think most of the discussion's already been had, and I respect everyone who's spoken here and don't disagree with most of what has been said. But what's before us is pretty simple. You know, we want to make sure that we have a report and that the mayor's office comes to public safety to talk about this. The mayor's office is pledging this very publicly here in this committee. I've talked to the mayor personally and have her personal promise that that is going to happen. To create trust, you've got to build it, and I think this is a step in that direction, and I would therefore urge an aye vote.
So on Mr. Blumenfield's motion, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
12 ayes, 3 noes.